So I wanted to make a video again about my unemployment. I had originally made one back in January, but right after I made it, I was hired on with the Bernie Sanders campaign, and it was an incredible. It was a very busy job, so I didn't get much time to work on any of the projects I had lined up during that first unemployment. As it is now, I'm back to being unemployed again. I'm in looking for a job and just doing side gigs to sustain myself. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what it felt and what it feels like to be unemployed. I'd been working from 17 until now 24. I was laid off for the first time back in November of 2019 on Thanksgiving Day. It came as a shock to me because, like I said, I had worked all those years and almost worked every single day. I worked as an iron worker and a project manager, and it was a very odd experience going from having no time at all because I was always working to having all the time in the world because I was unemployed. I had a very decent employer. While we didn't work union because we were a very small company in town, we were paid well, never forced or asked to work in unsafe environments. Having worked in the office, worked very closely with seeing the money that came in. It was us being laid off wasn't a matter of irresponsibility with the company's funds. Almost every single dollar went back into the employees and into the company. So yeah, what us being laid off was just a matter of what seemed at that time an approaching recession, and what seems like now a very, very real chance of a recession. As of today, March 13th, no, March 14th, I believe. No, yeah, March 13th, the economy, the stock market has plummeted. Coronavirus has very much halted production all over the country. Schools are being canceled, flights are being canceled, all sorts of travel is being restricted, and it's completely understandable. Our job currently is to make sure that there is no spread of the virus, so it's contributing a lot to the slowdown we'll be seeing in the coming year. In total, I think I spent about 3 months unemployed, which was really weird. It was super stressful because like I said, I had worked so long and then I had all this free time, but I couldn't even enjoy it because I had to make sure I was, getting income rolling back in, to support my mortgage, support myself, my bills and whatnot. So it was a very stressful time. It forced me to get creative in ways to save money. It wasn't all bad. I mean, I started cooking, which is something I wouldn't have taken to so easily or so well had I not been unemployed. I basically, had to force myself to cook at home and make sure that I wasn't eating out or, spending money unnecessarily. Hell, it even got to the point where I was eating like one potato and three eggs a day. It definitely showed that I was going through my unemployment. Being unemployed really taught me a lot about the state of this country and our capitalist mode of production. You often will hear, especially now, about this idea that most Americans are 1 to 2 paychecks away from being, homeless. And you don't really get that idea drilled into your head until you experience it yourself. Had I not been, fortunate enough to have a good savings, I would have been out on the streets. 2 paychecks, especially with many people being on a bi-monthly or bi-weekly, whatever it is, pay schedule. That's rough. That could be 2 weeks to a month of having no new revenue coming into your household. It also taught me a lot about my own personal value and how I see my life in relation to work. Having all the time in the world, I realized that I didn't just want to spend 40 hours of my week toiling at some job I didn't want to do, um, which, sucks because a lot of people have to do it, myself included. But it really makes you see that, we are all really just working just to survive. Work isn't like an ancillary thing that helps improve our lives. Work is the thing that keeps our lives going. Haven't been able to, travel and camp on a budget, nothing fancy, just like rather than going out to Red Rock for a weekend and stuff. It made me really truly value my own time and realize that I don't want to toil and work a job that I'm not happy in for the rest of my life, just to be able to continue to survive. It brought up a lot this idea of like production. Under capitalism, we often resignate ourselves to using all our time to do something that's going to be productive. It really changed my idea of what work means, of what production means. All these words, under our current society, it's like they have such a negative connotation. So many people feel guilty if they just like slack off, or even me describing it as slacking off. If they just like do nothing on their day off, they always end up feeling bad about it. And that's internalized capitalism. That's us saying that it's like all our lives have to be geared towards, bringing in money or doing something that's gonna net us a positive. When in reality, it's like sometimes we just need time to decompress and just take time to watch a movie with friends or, hang out and not do anything. Unfortunately, the system we live in really de-incentivizes that. That's where you see this idea of, hustling even when you're, on your days off, being productive on your days off, all that stuff. It's like sometimes you just need to take a break and not do something productive. There's a lot that we've internalized due to our capitalist mode of production, and that's stuff that we need to address because it's incredibly unhealthy. And it's unemployment really taught me a lot of this, like a lot of my self-value. I know a lot of there's a lot of stories, and how would I say, traditionally men being the breadwinners in our society, creates a huge strain when it comes to unemployment. Because, and I imagine this is a lot more to do with like if you have a family, like my pops during the '08 recession and whatnot. If you're the sole breadwinner and you can't, bring in money because you're unemployed, I imagine that, brings an incredible amount of stress down on a person, on a male individual. So luckily that's one of the things that I didn't struggle with. I personally, during my during my unemployment, I talked to friends, I talked to family, and reached out. I never had this struggle with like self-worth. I understood that my unemployment was just a factor, or a outcome of an uncontrollable event in my life. I didn't get unemployed because, I was fired, or hell, even if I wasn't employed because I was fired, it's like we shouldn't place our value as individuals solely on if we're working, and at that, if we're working, just some job, I could understand a little more if it was your career, something that you were really passionate about and had to give up or was taken away from you. But most folks are just working jobs they can get to get by, to survive. And so, I never struggled with this, this diminished sense of value in myself. And I do feel a lot of it was because I reached out. I know men tend to not speak on emotional matters with other folks, which is a huge detriment to us. It's one of these things, due to toxic masculinity, where we're taught not to speak on our emotions or talk about vulnerable matters because we need to constantly show this like bravado and puff our chest out and show that we aren't weak, which is incredibly unhealthy. It leaves a lot of folks by the wayside, and they don't know how to handle these situations in a healthy manner. But in reference to that, I really want to talk to my privileges really quick. Uh, so the only reason I made it through this unemployment, because 3 months of not getting income in is huge. Um, I got like a couple $100 here and there, just like doing photography. But most of it was just riding on my savings. And towards the end, I got a huge help out. But yeah, like I was very lucky to have several privileges on my side going into this unemployment, which is something I recognize most Americans likely won't have. To start with, I had a strong family unit that had my back. During Christmas, they saw how like gaunt I looked because I wasn't eating. I was eating one egg, no, three eggs and one potato a day. And just the fact that they like told me to come over to the house whenever I was hungry, that was a huge help. The fact that I had a strong family unit that in the worst case scenario, I could sell my house and go live with them. Um, you know, that's a huge help that most people don't have. That took a huge amount of stress off my head because I was like, yeah, if this gets really ugly, I'll just sell the house and go live with my family. Um, I'm lucky that I have family so close that I could have relied on. Um, what else? I had friends and family again. Family. I had friends, that I reached out to and let know my situation, and they were completely understanding of like where I was. They made sure that I was we could do things that were inclusive for me since I couldn't spend money and whatnot. They were there to listen when on my darkest days where I felt like I was really gonna sink. Um, and one of the things that helped a huge amount was I've owned two cars since like 2016. I had my very first car that I bought, and then I stopped driving that for a long time. And I had my daily driver Jeep. It's a Wrangler. And so, yeah, by the end of it, when it was looking very dark, I was able to get that first car sold, the one I didn't drive anymore. And that's, most people aren't able to afford a single car, to be able to move around. Like, if you don't have a car, me living in Vegas, if you don't have a car in Vegas, you don't have a job because, everything's so spread out and it's at least a 15-minute drive to work or anything else that you need to do, let alone having two cars. A lot of folks don't have that privilege, and I did. It was something that really at the end helped me out. I sold it for 2000 and, basically that helped me get through until my first paycheck with a Bernie campaign because they pay bi-weekly, so it was gonna be at least another 15 days before I got new revenue coming in. So yeah, like uh, being unemployed taught me a lot about like the society that we live in and how we value people. We need to have more empathy for folks. Which is something I saw a lot of while I was canvassing, where they would talk about, folks would talk about how they didn't want their neighbors to get health care because it's like they saw that they never worked. And it's like folks never want to feel like someone else is getting like a leg up on them or, getting something that they're not, which is terrible. It's like we have to recognize that it's employers and the larger system that keeps us down, not our fellow workers. And so, yeah, this whole experience has taught me a huge amount of empathy just for folks. I remember back in 2016, I did an entire project on homelessness here in Las Vegas. And I spoke to homeless people from all over the valley. And one of the biggest issues that I saw or they spoke to me about was that during the '08 recession, a lot of folks just lost their home because they didn't have work, and it kickstarted him on this path that entrenched him in homelessness. I'd say maybe 90% of the folks I talked to ended up that way because they lost their home during the recession. So with hindsight, looking back at where I was, it was like I truly saw like the pain they had in their eyes back in 2016 because it's like I was nearly there. If it wasn't for all these tools I had, uh, available to me, if it wasn't for all these privileges and people who were there for me, I'd be in the same situation. And that's the scariest part, that how many millions of Americans are living this close to the level of poverty, and just don't have a support system behind them that will assist them. It's something that has me a little nervous going into this, into the middle section of this year, because what we're seeing, like I said at the beginning, is a lot of slowdown in business due to the coronavirus. And so, fortunately, a lot of what we're hearing is, folks demanding, freezes on rent, freezes on mortgages, demanding, freezes on payroll, demanding that, if we can't work, we shouldn't be expected to continue to produce, when it's not possible. There's millions of Americans in this country that cannot afford to not show up to work, which is one of the issues that's exacerbating this virus, that it's transmittable without knowing you have it, and people are still showing up to work because that's what this, our capitalist system demands. That when folks are struggling, we still demand that they show up to work, and produce, and we don't worry about the consequences of what that will do to our society. In general, I'm rambling, but yeah, I just wanted to make that video really quickly, just exploring a little bit of my unemployment. Yeah, aside from that, I want to do, like I said, I'm back to being unemployed. This time around, I'm in a much better spot. I was able to save a little bit from the Bernie campaign, and I'm definitely in a much more favorable spot. Not only that, I have learned a whole bunch from this previous time. So I hopefully will be able to make more content and freelance on the side enough to where I can be consistent with this for once. But yeah, that's about it. Thanks.